Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Trey Gowdy, and it's a special edition of Sunday Night in America. Ready or not, here it comes. In less than 1 year, Americans will head to the polls to pick a president and 1/3 of the Senate and the whole House. Suffice it to say, you have questions, which we will try to answer throughout the course of our time together tonight, starting with Rich from New Jersey.
Hey, Trey, Rich Muller from New Jersey. I see Tim Scott has just withdrawn from the race for president. I'm really disappointed about that. I wonder what's changed in the landscape to make it like that he doesn't have a chance.
To quote Senator Scott himself, the voters said, no, not now, but that doesn't mean no, not ever. This is not a political season or historical cycle wherein someone with Tim Scott's demeanor is going to flourish. Politics right now covets fame over substance. Politicians make the news for what they wear or tweet or say, not what they do or even what they believe. It's a cycle where anger and frustration have supplanted hope and optimism. Policy is less important than personality. The GOP primary voters want a different kind of candidate from what Tim offers. You ask what changed. I think a lot of things have changed. Political opponents have become mortal enemies. Losing an election no longer means let's try harder next time. It means the future of humankind is at risk. And even though Reagan lost and Lincoln lost, some candidates claim they cannot lose. Reagan won a landslide, the likes of which have not been seen since. And yet he would not be the Republican nominee today. Former President Donald Trump has a commanding lead, but former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley is rising, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis picked up a coveted endorsement from Iowa Governor Kim Reynolds. Recent polling has former President Trump beating President Biden in nearly all so-called swing states. It's early. Lots can happen, but President Biden looks very beatable. It should be noted that that was also the prevailing belief last fall when Republican voters were disappointed with an underwhelming midterm performance, and as recently as this month with a loss in Kentucky. Are Republicans poised to take the White House, the Senate, and keep the House, or will Republicans be disappointed once again? We welcome Fox News contributor Karl Rove. Thank you for being here, Karl. You're an expert in all of this. Let me just start. Can former President Trump beat Joe Biden next fall? And if he is electable, doesn't that impeach the main political argument against him?
Well, look, if it's Trump versus Biden, yes, Trump can win. Biden can win as well. You're absolutely right. This is an election in which more people are going to be voting against the opponent than voting for their guy. And the recent poll showing that Donald Trump is a point or two ahead of Joe Biden nationwide and further ahead in the early battleground states, the key battleground states, is this is a real threat to Joe Biden's continued presence in office, but it is by no means a guarantee of the outcome. It's going to be a very close election either way. There are going to be lots of twists and turns. The role of third-party candidates, none of whom can win the presidency, but all of whom can have a deep impact on who wins the presidency. All these things are yet to play out. But yes, either man can win, and Donald Trump is ahead today.
Are there GOP presidential hopefuls who would fare better against Joe Biden than the former president?
Oh, absolutely. The polls show, for example, that one poll had Donald Trump up over Biden by 2. I think Ron DeSantis was up by 4, Nikki Haley by 8, and a generic Republican was up by 16 in one poll. So yes, absolutely. I've long thought that the party that figures out a new and different face than Biden or Trump is the party that's going to have the advantage in 2024. The American people don't want to have a contest between, a 78-year-old and an 82-year-old who we already had one contest 4 years ago between. They want to pass the torch, if you will, to a younger generation of leaders, and that's why the American people believe both men are too old to be president. Donald Trump by a majority, and Joe Biden by nearly three-quarters of the American voters. So, yeah, absolutely, this is going to be an interesting contest. More interesting if somebody new enters the fray as the nominee of either party.
All right, Republicans have had a series of disappointments in Senate races, and whether that was candidate selection or candidate performance, West Virginia does seem like a pickup, but you got Arizona and Montana and Ohio and Pennsylvania, and they look like they're going to be primary battles between election deniers and MAGA Republicans and more mainstream Republicans. What do you see on the Senate side?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd add two more states to your list, Michigan and Wisconsin, excuse me, three, Wisconsin and Nevada. But yeah, let's break it down into sort of three groups. The ones that are most winnable for the Republicans are the three states that were carried by Donald Trump in each of the last two elections. And those are, Montana, West Virginia, and Ohio. And I agree with you. I think West Virginia looks good. We have a great candidate, in my opinion, in Montana, in Tim Sheehy, and I think John Tester has cast votes in the last 6 years that are going to be problematic for him. So I think that's a potential pickup. If we win that one, and hold all our seats, which is likely, we're at 51. And then Ohio, which has voted terrifically for Republicans in recent years, the statewide ticket won by between 21 and 27 points. With one exception, and that was J.D. Vance, who won by 7. If the Republicans nominate a normal Republican, then I think we should have an excellent shot in Ohio, despite the fact Sherrod Brown is a tough candidate. So those are the three states that were won by Donald Trump in each of the last two elections. The next tier are going to be the states where it was close, and the closest was obviously Arizona, but it's a complicated picture there. Are we going to have two candidates or three candidates? If it's three candidates, we might be able to win, probably will win. If it's two candidates, a Republican and a Democrat, and Kristen Sinema is not the candidate of the Democrats, then it gets to be a lot tougher because the likely Republican is Carrie Lake, who lost the governor's race, refused to acknowledge that she lost it, and has gone out of her way to sort of put her finger in the eye of more moderate John McCain-style Republicans in the state. And then Pennsylvania, which is the next closest with just over 1.8%. We have a terrific candidate there in the form of Dave McCormick, who seems to be able to avoid a primary. The state party endorsed him unanimously. The Senate committee is behind him. Other people who are mentioned as candidates have endorsed him. He's a terrific human being, personal friend of mine. I think the world of him, and I think he's going to give Bob Casey a race for the record books. But it's a state that's going to be tough. It'll be the centerpiece, one of the centerpieces of the presidential campaign. And then the question is Michigan, Wisconsin, and Nevada. The question there is going to be determined to some degree by whether or not we have a good candidate who emerges from the primaries. A lot of time ahead, but we've got some good candidates either in the field, as in the case of Michigan, or thinking about it in the case of Wisconsin, and then a crowded primary in Nevada. But those are all going to be races where the Republicans do have a shot. The states were very close in the presidential race, particularly in 2016, and in Michigan and Wisconsin and Nevada, and again in 2020 for Wisconsin and Nevada, not so much in Michigan, but we will have a shot in those, and the quality of the candidates is going to matter immensely.
Let me ask you a really quick question before I let you go. The House, my old stomping grounds, has been a disaster of late. They replaced a speaker out of personal spite. They can't even bring a Republican bill to the floor. So will there be a residue from that come next fall, or will it not matter in a year?
Well, it depends on what happens between now and then. If we keep doing what we're doing in the House, the Republicans keep doing what they're doing, then it will matter. And it will be hugely affected by the presidential race above them on the ballot. But yeah, the Republicans in the House have made their chances of keeping the majority more difficult by how they've acted. And you're right, it's a small group has continued to basically block the ability of House Republicans to advance a broad, optimistic, upbeat agenda that causes them to be able to say, well, this is what I'm for, and it was blocked by a Democrat Senate and a Democratic president. But yeah, it's an uphill climb. Plenty of time to turn it around. Let's see if the new speaker can do that. But it's going to take the cooperation of a bunch of malcontents who thus far have not proven themselves to be constructive.
Karl Rove, hope you had a great Thanksgiving. Thank you, as always, for loaning us your expertise and joining us on a Sunday night. Take care.
You bet, Trey. Thank you. And I'm getting over the mashed potatoes and the ham and everything else that went with it.
Good for you. Me too.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.